by Dr. Sharik Siddiqui and his team. You will see them on the screen, Lina and Leo, who are helping us from the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. And this symposium is also sponsored by the International Institute of Islamic Thought. My name is Ilham Nasser. I'm a senior researcher and the director of the Human Development Program here at the International Institute of Islamic Thought, part of the Advancing Education in Muslim Societies initiative. This is the 4th annual symposium on Muslim philanthropy and civil society that is usually held in person. I participated years past in this event. So we are grateful for technology to be able to gather again, even though it's virtual. And very grateful to the IT teams here at the International Institute of Islamic Thought, as well as Indiana University team. I would like to ask you to bear with us as we maneuver this session from different places around the globe and run the presentations, hopefully as scheduled. The symposium started yesterday on Wednesday, and it will end on Sunday. Every day from 12 to 1:30, we will have a collection of papers that will be shared with us and presentations that will be shared with us. Started yesterday and will end on Sunday, as I just said. These presentations were selected for their relevance as well as their high quality to the issues of education research in Muslim majority communities and societies. They will be converted into manuscripts, into papers, right after this symposium, and will be peer-reviewed and prepared for publication in the Journal of Education in Muslim Societies, which is a new, about a year old or 2 years old collaboration between Indiana University Press and the International Institute of Islamic Thought. Each session will have 3 to 4 speakers. So today we have 4 speakers, and we will be playing the videos of each of these pre-recorded videos that the presenters prepared for us. Please and please and please keep yourselves muted. And it's better, I see all the lovely faces, but it's better to keep your videos off as well. And then once we start the Q&A, we will ask the speakers who are with us, and we already introduced ourselves to each other, but we will ask them to unmute and to show their cameras. We will announce each presentation at the beginning, and then we will, in between, we'll announce the next, and we'll, as I said, we have 4 of those presentations. The Q&A session will be for about 30 minutes, and I would like to ask you to chat your questions and your thoughts about the presentations, and we will address them all at the Q&A session. The presenters can address the questions that we will ask them. I will ask them the questions out loud. Huda here, who's our managing editor of the Journal of Education Muslim Societies, I mentioned, she will be gathering all the questions that are relevant to this conversation and to the themes and topics. So if you have a question that you think is of sensitive nature, just chat it to me, the chair of this session, in private. And other than that, I think we are ready to go. And I want to thank you all. We have about 35 participants here. I want to thank you all for being with us despite all the busy schedule. And I hope you will enjoy all the presentations. And then let's ask meaningful, challenging questions to our capable presenters. Thank you and welcome again.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. My name is Professor Muhammad Noor Awale. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Education Administrations and Foundations at the Illinois State University. My co-author is Rara Mohammed. She's a PhD candidate in the English department at Illinois State University. The topic of our research is the role of Islamic schools between parental perceptions and institutional realities, a case study. I pray all of you are safe and sound from COVID-19. This plague has caused death and destruction around the globe, including over 220,000 of my fellow Americans. COVID-19 has hit home for me and my family. We lost 2 distant cousins in London, and it almost killed my brother in London, who spent 3.5 months in the hospital. Alhamdulillah, he's out and he's doing fine. He's carrying portable breathing machine and lost short memory. Inshallah, and with the help of Allah, he will gain full health. I also pray to all those who have lost loved ones in the United States around the globe. May Allah give them peace and patience, and may all have mercy. Our purpose of the study is threefold. Number one, our study attempts to understand Muslim parents' motivation for sending their children to Islamic schools in US and the values, if any, they place on these schools regarding their role of developing their children's educational experience. Number two, we would like to explore Muslim students' views on educational experience attending Islamic schools in America and the challenge and benefits they report regarding such experience. Finally, the study will contribute to the existing literature on Islamic schools in America and what should be done to improve their performance. There are 3 research questions that are guiding this study. Number one, what are Muslim parents' perceptions regarding the role of Islamic schools in their children's education? In other words, we want to know the parents, how they view their children's education in Muslim schools. In this case, when we say Muslim schools, we're not talking about the madrasa or Sunday schools. We're talking about full-fledged from kindergarten all the way to high school. Question number 2, what do Muslim American children themselves report regarding the role of Islamic schools in their education? How do they feel? What benefits and what challenge they face? And finally, what is the policy, research, and practical implication of Islamic schools? Any studies that are done in any topic has implications, both practical and research. We would like to say a few things about our research positionality. Anytime you are conducting a qualitative study, or for that matter, any study, you have to state clearly your positionality. As 2 Muslim scholars, we understand that our awareness of our religious identity will not interfere in our analysis of the results and recommendations of this study. Thus, as education researchers and as professors, we use our existing knowledge, that is our existing Islamic education knowledge about students, about Islamic schools, about basics of Islamics, about school leadership, about teachers, to frame our findings in line with the governing ethics of research. Based upon our findings, we propose recommendations that we anticipate will ultimately assist Islamic schools and improve their schooling, thereby support them in adapting and integrating them to US schooling models. There are a number of significant, important about this study. Number one, it contributes to the scholarship on Islamic schools. It's also beneficial to future scholars as they examine and discuss what needs to be done to improve the quality of education offered to Muslims. There are hundreds of Islamic schools across the country and across the world, so any study that sheds light about issues will be welcome. We hope that this study will contribute to better understanding of educational issues unique to Muslim students, especially immigrant Muslim students, such as Syrians, Somalis, and other Iraqis. And we would like to address the needs that these students have. There are a number of limitations inherent in any study, and our study is not exceptional. The persons included in this study were only parents and students. Thus, it will be helpful to include principals, teachers, and administrators, receptionists as well. There is also a limitation associated with collecting data of one site in Midwestern school. Thus, that has its own issues. This study was limited indeed to one school located in one urban city in Midwest. The limitation of this study, therefore, was its small sample that will focus on one geographical area. Therefore, the findings of this study might not be generalizable to other geographical areas. Despite the above limitation, there is much to be learned from our study. The methodology. We used the case study methodology because it permits us to explore and gain in-depth understanding and analysis of parents and students of Islamic schools. According to Yin, who noted that case study method is appropriate, quote, to understand a real-life phenomena. Both Stake and Yin, again, have shown that the case study is an empirical inquiry that involves in-depth examination and analysis of an issue, person, group, community, program, or school. In similar vein, Stock 1995 described case study as well-bounded, specific, complex, and functioning thing, which means a person or a program. Both Stock and Yin has also indicated that it's important to articulate the case study method. Lincoln and Coupon suggests that the case study must have an action criteria that will facilitate action on the parts of the readers. Furthermore, Lincoln and Coupon suggest that the case study must have an action criteria that will facilitate on the part of the participants and researchers. This qualitative study combined aspects of convenience and purpose sampling. The convenience sample included 10 participants from parents and 10 students from Islamic school located in the Midwest. Now we move to the results and discussion. Please note that the study is still in this preliminary stage. So what we are going to share with you is preliminary findings so far. First, the parental views about our study. On the positive side, they clearly articulated that this Islamic school provided a safe environment for developing their children's education and religious identities. In other words, education we mean intellectual, emotion, and social identities, as well as religious identities. Islamic schools help their children maintain and develop their cultural values and morals and ethical. Too often we blame Islamic schools, quote unquote, breeding terrorism. That is not consistent with our research, as well as the research that we have found about Islamic schools. Again, we need to emphasize when we say Islamic schools in USA, we're talking about full-fledged schools that provide education from kindergarten to high school. Another point that they indicated, the parents, was that Islamic schools support their children in maintaining their bilingual identities. So, for example, if the students in Islamic schools in Minnesota and Minneapolis and St. Paul, where are quite a number of Islamic schools, that cater to the needs of Muslim Somali students function both in English language and also learn their Somali language. In a similar vein, some students learn their Arabic language as well as their English language. We must emphasize the first language of all these Islamic schools. The primary language of instruction is English. So whether they are learning Arabic on the side as a bilingual, or Somali, or Urdu, we need to emphasize again that the primary language is English. After all, these students are prepared to go to college in the United States. The parents also indicated that there is a need to improve parental involvement in Muslim schools. The parents we interviewed said that only certain parents are always involved. That could relate to either work situation, especially very difficult during the COVID-19. We have done our study during not during the COVID-19, but before COVID-19. The parental on the negative side indicated that the schools ought to end the one size fits for all. In other words, the students who are being educated in Islamic schools come from various cultural backgrounds and diversity. Thus, we need to develop a mechanism, policies, curriculum, leadership policies, learning and teaching that cater to diverse needs of Muslim students, whether those Muslim students are Arabs in their terms of their background, Somalis, or Indian Muslims, or Pakistanis, or Bangladesh. The point here is one size fits all does not work. They also indicated the challenge that Muslim schools faced, particularly in regard to funding resources, that sometimes contribute to the lack of training teachers. Some of these teachers are community volunteers. Some are highly trained. Some are underpaid. So the funding is a big challenge. They also addressed the lack of teaching materials that address the diverse children needs, especially when it came to Arabic-speaking parents, as they see this material is ill-suited for the children's Arabic skills. In this case, we studied those population. The limited number of teachers caused their children to spend more time attending additional classes, such as weekend schooling, particularly Arabic language. To continue the result and discussion, from the children's perspective, the positive aspect of Islamic schools noted by the children we interviewed indicated that Islamic schools help them build their religious identities, provide them comfort zone, provide them an environment where they build relationship and friendship with other Muslims from diverse backgrounds. They provided the schools, provide them space where they can embrace their dress code that suit their religious background, yet feel safe, so they won't be judged. As we all know, hijab has become an issue for those who want to stereotype Muslims. Therefore, students indicated that they felt very comfortable and not judged in this school environment, while the schools cater to their needs, both educational, emotional, social. They felt that they were not judged. Schools also help them practice and participate in community events that foster their cultural values, their integration with other Muslims, as well as how to integrate to the larger society. So the schools become a cushion with regard to cultural values, with regard to social, but the schools also prepare them for college. Make no mistake about it. Islamic schools, those who are accredited, are preparing students for college and universities. The students, however, indicated a number of issues. One is lack of clear assessment criteria by some teachers. Some of the teachers were untrained. They spend extra time to learn school materials that the school doesn't offer them. For example, they attend weekend schools. And they also indicated that Arabic is not taught as a subject. Particularly, this is Arab background students. There are a number of implications for policy and for future research of our study. We should note that our study provides neither a framework nor a blueprint for all Islamic schools. In other words, we are not really studying all Islamic schools. Administrators and teachers should examine, we argue, their own biases about immigrant school students that they bring to schools, especially when they come from different cultural Islamic background, from Arab, from Indian, from African. So they bring those things to their schools. So we are arguing and we are emphasizing that they should examine their own biases. We should indicate that the future studies should investigate the extent to which teachers' philosophies of education, their values, are oriented toward transforming curriculum, as well as transforming leadership. Future studies also and future research can expand these studies and investigate what other factors might contribute to the development of Islamic schools in the US. We note that comparative studies of different schools from different regions, Midwest, East, South, with different immigrant students all over the country should be conducted. Indeed, that could enhance our knowledge base with respect of administrators, teachers, how they address the needs of Muslim, American-born, and immigrant students. The bottom line is this: we are concerned, all of us, in every education setting, to meet the needs, how to meet the needs of students, in this case, the needs of Muslim students, and for them to become successful and transition to college setting. Thank you so much, and we appreciate for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Muhammad Al-Noor Awali. I would like to thank you and remind people that the title of your paper was The Role of Islamic Schools Between Parental Perceptions and Institutional Realities. The next paper is going to be on reflections on children's voices in e-learning during COVID-19 pandemic. What children tell us about e-learning? The paper will be presented by Dr. Buad Khalis from Al-Quds University.
My name is Buad Khalis, Associate Professor, Curriculum and Instruction in Primary Education and Kindergarten at Al-Quds University, Director of Child Institute at Al-Quds University. It's my pleasure to participate in this symposium. My research titled Reflection on Children's Voices in E-Learning COVID-19 Pandemic. What children tell us about e-learning? The research contains study aim, study questions, participants, methodology, study instruments, data analysis, and results. Kindergarten enables children to interact and cooperate with others and cope with development in different situations that kindergarten provide young children aged 3 to 6 years old are enrolled in kindergarten with a solid foundation, important experience, knowledge, and opportunities to develop different abilities and skills, language, social, emotional, and cognitive. Early childhood teachers know about children's learning and development and appreciate their intelligences. Teaching in kindergarten need to focus on the child's experience, culture, and environment in harmony with her or his needs. What happened? In the middle of COVID-19 pandemic, kindergarten in Palestine comply to the lockdown procedures which promoted considering e-learning strategy as one of the distant learning tools, despite the fact that early childhood has critical aspects of privacy and huge importance for formulating children's responsibility. Many kindergartens classroom dealt with e-learning as a holistic approach for teaching and learning and give assignments to children, send stories to be watched at home and provide lessons through Zoom or other platforms. The purpose of the study is to investigate young children's voices in e-learning, examine the possible impact this may have on children in kindergarten classrooms in Jerusalem and Palestine, determine the advantages and disadvantages of e-learning for young children. Study question: what are children's voices in e-learning during COVID-19 pandemic? What children tell us about e-learning? What are children's perspectives on using e-learning? What is the impact of e-learning on children's development? Participant: 50 children from Jerusalem kindergartens. Methodology: qualitative. This research used qualitative approach. The instrument, the research used 3 instruments: face-to-face interview, virtual interview, video analysis. Semi-structured interview, face-to-face. Semi-structured interview conduct with children on an individual basis. 30 children interview virtually to determine the type of e-learning they have been exposed for 30 minutes. Semi-structured interview virtually. Semi-structured interview conducted with children on an individual basis. 20 children interviewed virtually to listen to their stories and experience for 30 minutes. Content analysis of video: 10 videos recorded during learning lessons. Result: the first result related to the question how teachers used e-learning. There are many scenarios of e-learning that kindergarten teachers applied during COVID-19 pandemic. The first scenario: the teacher recorded film about the educational unit and sent them to parents through a class team. Parents download the video. Moreover, they send worksheets. Children and parents watch the video, and children solve the worksheet after a full explanation. The second scenario, teachers provide the children's parents with links to educational films on specific topics and concepts. Then ask the children to watch and comment on the content of the film through an audio message. The third scenario, teachers could teach the children through Zoom and discuss with them the important concepts and topics. They could record a lesson via Zoom and send it to the parents and ask the children to solve the worksheet, writing, matching between objects, classification, coloring, drawing, etc. Fourth scenario, the teachers send an audio message and ask the children to record an audio message such as reciting words, reciting nasheed, reciting Quran, etc. Fifth scenario, the teachers provide the parents with full instructions on how to conduct activities with their children. They ask the children to record films and send the records to the group on WhatsApp. The teachers discuss and explain the activities with the children and their parents. Another result, the results related to the question, what children tell us about e-learning? What are children's perspectives on using e-learning? The study found that 45 children are dissatisfied with e-learning approach. They want to go back to their kindergarten due to several reasons. The first is about friends, where children expressed their belonging to their friends. Some children even called their friends, and they indicated that communicated with their friends through the phone or internet is not enough. Play. Children indicated that in the kindergarten, there are different games they like to play with, such as imagination games, shop corner, and musical instruments. Another reason about the outdoor playground. Children pointed that the outdoor yard in the kindergarten contained many activities and games, such as playing with sand, planting plants, running, jumping, and many kinds of activities. Children indicated that there are activities which children miss, such as experimenting with their friends and mentoring morning dialogue in which they express their feeling and the things they saw on the way while attending kindergarten. Finally, they talk about teachers. Children indicated that they miss their teacher who hugged them, patted their shoulders, and greeted them. On the other side, children indicated they don't want to go to kindergarten because they are being beaten. 5 children indicated that e-learning is better because they do not listen to the friends while they are shouting. 8 children indicated that the home is better and fit their needs because they sleep more, but they hate e-learning because they want to play on the phone and not study. Finally, the study found that e-learning have a negative effect on children. It created a short-term problem, including weak engagement and low motivation of the children to study and learn. In addition to that, children feel nervous about doing their homework. They are letting the teacher to all the time to be talking alone without interaction and engagement. It also found long-term problems, including a change in children literacy and thinking development. Thank you so much, and it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Boad. Dr. Khalis, thank you for your presentation. I'm already noticing some interesting conversations going on. Keep going with the chat, and we will continue with the 2 additional presentations we have today. The next one is on playback theater and how it was experienced by Palestinian adolescents living under the Israeli occupation by Dr. Khitam Edelbi. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Edelbi Khitam. My research title was Using Playback Theater with Adolescents in Palestine to Tell Their Stories. The purpose and goals of my research were to examine the potential of playback theater with Palestinian adolescents in refugee camps. Playback theater is a theater method that is based on stories that come from audience, and the actors improvise the stories immediately on stage in front of the audience. I wanted to check if playback theater could elicit their personal stories, allow creative expression, and give some hope for life when life is surrounded by occupation, confrontations, and death. The main question of the research was, what is the experience of Palestinian adolescents, boys exposed to playback theater for the first time? Participants were 16 boys, 15 to 16 years old, but I continued with 11 because 5 didn't complete for different reasons. We conducted 16 playback workshop sessions 2 times per week. 2 to 2.5 hours was each session. At the end of the research, we had a final performance when friends and family were invited. With me, I had a playback theater conductor, Palestinian conductor, who also was trained in playback theater and had experience with adolescents. The data collection was based on observation of all sessions documented, supplemented with video, interviews with the boys after workshop series, interviews with the boys' mothers, and evaluation and interview with the conductor. The boys' stories were about everyday life, death and martyrdom, and stories with no words. The themes that emerged during the work were about happiness, personalities changes, expressions, social, friendship, sadness, positive interaction, learning, gaining new things, gaining new skills, and death. Nine of the 11 participants stated participation positively impacted social interactions. One of them said, I became closer to my peers within the group. I even started to visit some of them at home and we started chatting about this course while we were in school. 8 of 11 said they discovered new things about themselves or new skills. And one of them in this regard said, I learned that I could learn and apply new things that I had no idea about before. The experience changed and developed me as a person. 11 of the 11 boys reported some positive response overall to participating. One said, I discovered that I am a good person and that I treat others with respect. 8 of 9 said the performance allowed sharing their growth with their families and relatives. One of them said, I was very happy to be in front of audience, although I was a bit shy in the beginning, but felt good to see my mom in the audience. When we had the evaluation with the mothers, one of them said, I saw how happy my son was when he came back from the session and felt that drama project even changed him for the better. One mother said, I was thrilled and positively surprised by my son's performance. Another mother said, my son is usually shy and laid back, and I was happy to see him on stage. Another mother said, I was happy with my son's performance. I know how shy he is in public. Before I go to the conclusion, I would like to share my screen with you so I could also share some pictures. As I said, I conducted my research in Qalandia refugee camp, and this is the main entrance of the camp. Qalandia checkpoint was built on the main entrance of the camp. So people who want to go to the camp or Ramallah area have to go through this checkpoint. And the center where we conducted the research was not that far also, just a few meters away from the checkpoint. I had to go through the checkpoint each time I went to the session. This is just small part of the very crowded camp. You can see that the separation wall surrounds the camp, and this is also part of the checkpoint. Here's some of the boys are doing a warm-up activity, and we usually we started each session with warm-up activity. Another kind of warm-up activity with scarves. Here on stage at the final performance, you can see some of the mothers who attended the event. One of the boys chose to act out his friend, the martyr who was killed a few months before we started our research. This is one of the friends who attended the performance. He went on stage and told his story, and the actors, the boys, acted out his story. Here you can see one of the mothers on stage telling her story, and the boys acting the story, and this was actually her son. I want to go to the conclusions. Unexpected adaptation or resilience displayed in the behaviors and the stories of everyday normal adolescent life that the boys told. Participants able to recognize and process violence and death by generating their own group response. Playback and arts-based methods offer outlets for expression and development that might foster growth over time. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my story and share with you some small part of the boys' stories. Boys from Qalandia refugee camp. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Khitam, for your presentation. I would like to let you all know that we have a very short survey to evaluate the session, and we're doing that on a daily basis. Lina will put the link out, and would you please at the end, right before, a few minutes before 1:30 or before you leave, just make sure you answer our questions to evaluate the session and evaluate the content as well as the logistics. It's very short, so we encourage you and ask you please to take it. Lina already shared the link with you. Our last and not least presentation is from Dr. Ahmed Abdel Hakim Hashilaf and Dr. Steve Parks. They will talk about recognizing, it's a project that they worked on, and the title is Recognizing Our Brothers and Sisters, Building Our Future Leaders, the Mu'akhat Peer Mentoring Program for University Students. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. So we will be talking about the Mu'akhat, a peer mentoring program for university students. So after immigrating to Al-Madinah, the first thing the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, did was require Mu'akhat, brothering between Al-Muhajirin, the new immigrants who were persecuted in Mecca, and Al-Ansar, the inhabitants in Medina. So everyone from Al-Ansar was asked to take a brother or a sister and help her or him out succeed in the new environment. From this moment onward, Arab and Muslim cultural and religious practices has become deeply enmeshed in providing such assistance to new community members. Indeed, the emerging goal of many Middle Eastern and North African nations to provide access to university education might be seen as a result of such beliefs, an attempt to support the next generation in their journey to becoming effective community members. This is certainly the case in Algeria, where access to education is free or of little cost. Yet the practices of actual colleges towards their new students have often failed to enact such support. Too often, new students are not provided with institutional programs required to succeed in the new land, that is the university. Situated between cultural beliefs and institutional practices, the Mu'akhat Peer Mentoring Program is an effort to respond to the actual needs of new students who are often unfamiliar with traditional practices of college. Here we are defining mentoring as providing support and advice for novice students who do not understand the cultural expectations of professors, the rigor of college work, the benefits of academic advising, and the network of resources and possibilities a college might offer beyond graduation. Beyond this specific transfer of skills, the Mu'akhat project also intends to promote an altruistic character, a cooperative sense of community, and a civic commitment towards others. While the benefit of such a program for students is clear, we would also argue that such mentoring program enables faculty and administrators to gain a better understanding of the needs of their students. Such programs, that is, provide data which can enable colleges to identify causes for students' failure, allowing the institutions to respond and improve to students' success. Through mentorship, then we argue the leadership and effectiveness of both students as well as college leadership develop. The Mu'akhat project attempts to instill traditional Arab and Muslim values into our modern institutions of higher education. In effect, imagining students as immigrants to whom we have communal responsibility of care and concern. So our MUAKHAT project emerged from an ongoing partnership between the University of Virginia and the Higher Normal School of Lagwa, that is the teacher education institute that prepares teachers, which was focused on enabling students to succeed in college while also fostering commitment to civic society. Over the past 3 years, we have collaborated on creating courses which linked students to entry-level coursework at University of Virginia with the students of English in education courses at the Teacher Education Institute. In both situations, these students' population were in the midst of a transition into college, into teaching careers, etc. This posed fundamental questions about the civic and ethical values students would bring into these new contexts. Within this combined community, then students engaged in dialogues on interrelated issues of education, civil society, human rights, and such. And these conversations were then published in English and in Arabic and are circulated globally, such as the case of Equality and Justice, which was published by Parlo Press. In the past year, the MUAKHAT project expanded its partnership to include the University of Jalfa and the University of Temple. Yet the same conversations in which students engage in dialogues about how their values would intersect within the demands of the new educational and professional homes also demonstrated a previously acknowledged concern. Students often felt adrift during this transition and are unsure of how to navigate their new contexts successfully. While our work had provided a context to solidify the values which might inform their educational and professional trajectory, our project had not provided them with the required skills to succeed within these institutions. And yet, a cursory look at the data regarding student success in universities should have altered us to this concern. Consider the case of Algeria, since such a focus intersects with the global nature of our gathering. According to the former Secretary General of the Ministry of Higher Education, the failure rate of all students in Algerian universities hovers between 60 and 50%. When broken down by demographics, the picture is more gloomy. The failure rate of rural students, for example, is exponentially higher than urban students, with many of these students having never left their home communities or having never personally engaged within international contexts. Such failure rates runs counter to the aim of enhancing quality education and realizing broad inclusion within Algerian universities, as detailed in the Algerian State's Licence Master Doctorate, that is the LMD reform. Indeed, the LMD was also intended to better prepare students for their postgraduate life, a life imagined in terms of a career embedded within a globalizing marketplace and commitment to being civically engaged. Yet, if the majority of students are not graduating, these secondary goals become impossible. Thus, while the university system welcomes students from across the nation at increasing numbers, this same system does not provide the institutional support necessary for these students to succeed. As a result, there is a systemic need to incorporate institutional structures that support students succeeding in college and enabling them to become economically successful, civically engaged college graduates. That is, students should be able to succeed their educational and professional aspirations. As such, we are expanding the MUAKHAT project to work beyond intercultural dialogues. We are now working to expand the MUAKHAT project to sponsor a peer-to-peer mentoring program which will enable immediate and long-term success by students, while also developing the data which enable effective institutional reform focused on increasing graduation rates and providing civically minded education. As noted at the outset of our talk, through the concept of MUAKHAT, we learned that the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, understands accompaniment or companionship as a necessary step for the creation of a successful community, integrating individuals and tribes into one common framework. In the Holy Quran, God commands Al-Madina's natives for their altruism, but those who before them had homes in Al-Madinah and had adopted the faith showed their affection to such as came to them for refuge, and entertained no desire in their hearts for things given to the latter, but gave them preference over themselves, even though poverty was their own lot. And those saved from the covetousness of their own souls, they are the ones that achieve prosperity. وَالَّذِينَ تَبَوَّأُوا الدَّارَ وَالْإِيمَانَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ يُحِبُّونَ مَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَا يَجِدُونَ فِي صُدُورِهِمْ حَاجَةً مِمَّا أُوتُوا وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ وَمَنْ يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ فَأُولَئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. From Surah Al-Hajj. Thus, MUAKHAT counters the feeling of estrangement, provides comfort, and ensures prosperity for all. Indeed, by brothering and sistering, each new immigrant and long-term community member strengthens one another. We are understanding university students as immigrants to a new land and invoking the sense of personal commitment to them by their new community members and institutional homes. To enact this commitment to new students, we are interpreting mu'akhat as form of mentoring. Here, mentoring is defined as pairing of a more skilled and experienced person with lesser skilled or experienced one with the agreed upon goals in order to develop competencies, as Murray puts it. The objective of the mentorship is to facilitate transfer of the skills that ultimately improve the effectiveness of teaching and the quality of learning, as well as to enrich the climate of the university. In exploring the role of mentorship on US college students from under-resourced backgrounds, scholarly research has demonstrated the importance of such individual mentoring programs for students facing difficulties entering and succeeding in university culture. As importantly, such research has also indicated that personal mentoring also enables students to navigate the resources available at a university to ensure they gain the full benefit of their educational experience. Finally, significant research has also demonstrated that providing students with civic engagement connections greatly improves retention and graduation rates at universities and colleges. While recognizing the differences in context between the United States and Algeria, we would argue that sufficient commonality exists between non-traditional students enrolling in universities that across contexts are modeled on European concepts of higher education. The institutional structures are not so different that systemic issues in the United States are totally separate from those in Algeria. Rather, the same difficult interface between new students and college remains a consistent problem in both contexts, particularly for the non-traditional students. Indeed, the Mu'akhat project intends to specifically recruit mentors who represent the diversity of heritages, regions from which the students encountering the greatest difficulty originate. It is the common cultural framework integrated into research-based practices, we believe, will enable non-traditional students to make the transition to the university context, which is seemingly so radically different from their secondary education. We'll have to note that criteria for mentor selection will also include solid academic records, extracurricular achievement, civic engagement, good communication skills, proven commitment to extension projects, etc. To be more specific, the Mu'akhat project will provide training for mentors on acclimatizing to university culture, gaining academic skills, establishing career goals, and understanding local and national and transnational civic engagement. Embedded within these sessions will also be implicit skills such as the communication, problem solving, study skills, time management, reflective listening, and different learning styles. At the conclusion of these sessions, the Mu'akhat project mentors will be expected to provide similar training for their four assigned mentees. Subsequent workshops on skills such as academic research will be attended by both the mentors and mentees, providing continued support and community building as the academic term progresses. More importantly, as our project develops, we hope to develop these examples of communal values supporting academic achievement as a way to demonstrate how their home community has already provided them with the skills required to succeed in college, rather than asking students to shed their home identity for success. We hope the Mu'akhat project will demonstrate that a student's home identity as the key for their success, which is to say, we understand Mu'akhat as not requiring an abandonment of an individual's past, but understanding how it can be brought into a collective future pointed to communal success. We understand that mentoring alone will not address a second needed reform to support all students' success. Classroom practices must also be changed. While the LMD reform had the goal for a more engaged and civically committed education, recent history has shown that Algerian university seem to lack models which demonstrate an intellectually engaged, mentoring-based, and civically framed classroom. Instead, the lecture-based pedagogical models which dominate Algerian university operate to both alienate already marginalized students within the university and fail to provide the type of dialogic engagement which prepares students to participate. Instead, the lecture-based pedagogical models which dominate Algerian universities operate to both alienate already marginalized students within the university and fail to provide the type of dialogic engagement which prepares students to participate in a civic environment with increasingly global networks. Indeed, such pedagogical models fail to provide the background skills which are necessary for college success, since they assume students' ability to navigate the knowledge and disciplinary context within the university, as well as how to seek assistance within the university. And we would argue lecture-based classes too often frame intellectual success in opposition to the values and skills non-traditional students might bring into the classroom, which is to say, within an academic lecture of sociology of rural life, for example, the knowledge of actual rural students is too too often ignored or discounted. Here again, we find it useful to suggest pedagogical frameworks emerging out of civic engagement practices within the United States. Specifically, we would point to scholarly research on literacy, which the term connotes more than just simple reading or writing skills. Instead, here literacy comes to mean the ways in which particular communities frame, research, and create knowledge for specific purposes. Within such a literacy paradigm, the ways in which schools develop models of learning would certainly be focused upon. Equally important, however, might be the communal knowledges that students bring into the class. For instance, a focus on working class communities might draw forth the ways in which linguistic patterns drawing from specific European heritages also are connected to conceptions of communal loyalty or ethics. A student utilizing such ways of speaking in class would not then be speaking incorrectly as much as invoking that communal knowledge into the classroom context. Literacy studies then imagine the classroom as a site where different knowledges are placed into dialogue with the aim of drawing them together into new forms of knowledge. Such classrooms position the professor not as a lecturer depositing knowledge into his passive students, but as a facilitator demonstrating the complex negotiation out of which knowledge is created. The intersection of personal, communal, academic, and public insights that blend into what we might call common sense. Within such a classroom, all students are invited into the production of new insights. Dialogue is vital, and communal responsibility to the betterment of the learning community is key, which is to say, if a student sees the ethics and practices of an engaged community during their grad education, these same students will come to expect such communities in their daily lives upon graduation. Indeed, the sense of brotherly and sisterly commitment to the creation of an intellectually prosperous academic and civic community, we believe, speaks to the lessons learned from the Mu'akhat, and important to us, shifts the classroom into a mentoring space committed to the success of all those involved, students and teachers alike. Here we need to be clear that in invoking US models of civic education, we recognize how such models are premised on somewhat naive versions of democracy, with citizenship as often assumed for all participants. We need to recognize that through the line of democracy as civic engagement, both versions of democracy assume the righteousness of US democracy without also exploring its destructive impact in the Middle East and North Africa. Here again, our hope is by embedding such engaged and civic education within communal and regional conceptions of Mu'akhat, students will develop their own sense of civic, which responds to the need of their immediate local need. Here again, our hope is by embedding such engaged and civic education within communal and regional perceptions of Mu'akhat, students will develop their own sense of civic, which responds to the need of their immediate local moment in the service of a culturally and historically informed sense of their own nation. Finally, we would want to argue that the combination of a peer-to-peer mentoring program and a literacy-infused classroom environment would bring the seemingly personal but deeply communal causes of students' failure to succeed in the university. As faculty share the ways in which different students are located ethically and culturally towards academic knowledge, they will see what specific skills need to be taught across classrooms to ensure student success. Perhaps an opportunity emerges to reform their institutions to the better. Or to put it another way, if administrators can come to see the skills brought to their cities by new arrived immigrants, perhaps learning can prosper in new and untold ways. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ahmed, for this presentation, and thank you for Dr. Steve Parks, who is a co-author on this presentation. We have till 1:25 to ask some questions and pose the questions to our presenters. So I would like to invite our presenters to unmute themselves, as well as they can show their cameras or their pictures if they choose to. It's not a must, but a recommendation. And because we don't have a lot of time to ask all the questions and mention the comments, you all saw the comments in the chat. But I would like to pose one question to each one of our speakers, and hopefully it will encompass some of the questions raised in the chat. First, for Dr. Noor Al-Awali, Dr. Muhammad, there was, in your presentation, you talked about positionality and the way you go about your research as a Muslim yourself and your identity in the research. And one of the interesting questions that I think is important for us as people who are interested in research, and we saw lots of different methodologies used here in the 4 presentations, but as researchers, is it possible to avoid being biased in researching one case study of Islamic schools or Muslim schooling in the US? Is it possible to neutralize that? One of the people asked. And then when you mentioned the second part of this, when you mentioned one size fits all, do you want to explain what that means in this case in your study? Why is that a conclusion of your study? And what do you mean when you say one size fits all?
Thank you. The first one is about positionality. I think it's a common methodology. It came up also, the idea of kind of Muslim scholar or Muslim intellectual somehow remove themselves from the subjects they are studying. So positionality we have to put up front, right there, so there won't be any confusion. The notion that in social science there is objectivity, it's questionable. So when I say those things is, how do you control bias? Well, the subject, I don't have any relationship with the subjects we are studying, whether there are 10 students or whether there are 50. But I want to inform people who are going to read, people who read this research, that the framework we use as a Muslims, we're not using as a Muslims, so I'm doing this as a Muslim. No, I'm studying schools and I'm seeing, and we're looking at them to what extent that they meet the needs of the parents and students. So the idea that somehow you will bring your biases toward how do you control? The question is, how do you control that biases as a Muslim? It's the same, you could ask the same question. Gary Beck, who did a study called the Catholic schools and the common good. In other words, a Catholic study in Catholic schools. So we can control that bias. We can control it because we are framing it in methodological terms. We are studying using case study methodology, and we draw from the research. But on the other hand, and then our knowledge actually enhances. In other words, we are studying an area that we are a bit familiar in terms of what Islam is, but we don't know much what takes place in the school setting. Does that make sense? The other question is, one size fits all. What I mean is that too often when people talk about Islamic schools, they use one size fits all. They all think that Islamic schools are the same. We don't ask that question when it comes to Catholic schools, Jewish schools, or other religious-oriented schools. There's no one size fits all. There are excellent Islamic schools that outperform any public or private school. One of them is located in Maryland. Another one is located in Canada, where students outscore all the Canadian in terms of test. So we have to stay away. The stereotype that when we talk about Islamic schools, that somehow, and this Islamic phobic, they're one sits for nonsense. I had a student who actually studied, and I chaired that dissertation about 10 years ago, Islamic schools and common good. Another myth is this somehow, Islamic schools do not prepare students for secular world. It's not supported by research. Absolutely not supported by research. Islamic schools have dual roles, two roles. One, to really teach students based on their background, just like Catholic schools do, but also teach them and prepare them to be good citizens. And how do you do that? They use the state standards. The state standards, they take state, after all schools are accredited. Again, we are talking about accredited institutions. So they use state accreditation. So what Hassan Al-Anani, for example, did was he looked at Islamic schools in 3 Chicago schools, and I chaired that dissertation 10 years ago. What has he found? He found that Islamic schools' role as institutions delivering a good I'll repeat again, a good American education. Everybody put that in your head. A good American education, just like the Catholics do. What do Hassan and he studied? This is also in line with the findings of Barrick and his colleagues, Catholic schools and common good. So they teach about Islam and all these things, but they also teach about good education that provides them citizenship training, tolerance of other different people.
Yeah, thank you. I think that point came across, the fact that being in Islamic school doesn't mean that it's not of quality, and being in Islamic school doesn't mean that they don't follow the official state curriculum, and that's, I think, an important point. Thank you for that, Dr. Noor Al-Awali. I would like to move to Dr. Khalis, Dr. Baad. Dr. Baad, the question here is, what did the children say about the pandemic itself? What's their understanding of what we're going through? And if you could elaborate a little bit about the social, emotional aspects of there is a reason why 45 children out of the 50 you interviewed talked about the fact that they don't like e-learning, and of course, understandably, but did they mention anything regarding this, the aspects that are more on the socio-emotional, not necessarily homework and assignments and so forth? Dr. Baad, are you with us?
Assalamu alaikum. Children know about COVID-19 or virus from their parents or from their teachers. When I talk with the children in conversation, I ask them about what they hear about COVID-19. Children, some of them told me that they don't know more about COVID-19, but they listen that some people died from outside and from Palestine, and it's a danger, and they afraid about it. All families stay at home. They don't know what to do. Many kind of problems related to COVID-19. And about e-learning, when they stay at home, in the beginning, there are no kindergartens, no learning. Children only play or with other families, and talk through a phone or WhatsApp with their friends. And about e-learning, at the first month, they get worksheets or videos or some of kinds of scenarios what I presented about the children. About when we talk about interaction and social development, more emotional development, some of them express that they are afraid. They hate e-learning. They don't like to watch teacher only through film. They need to play or talk with their friends and to interact with each others. Also, when we talk about child development, about not only social and emotional, we talk about sensitive and motor development. Also, children need to play, to go outside, to talk with children, to other children, and to talk with teachers through e-learning, through video, through computer. It's not enough for children, and it's not give them what they need, what they want to do and to play. Children some of them told me that they make telephone for teacher and ask her when the kindergarten will open. They want to know about the kindergarten.
Oh, Dr. Baad,
Yeah.
Okay.
They ask about, it's not from me. I don't know how it's muted. Yeah. They asked about their friends. They need to play with their friends and to listen to them.
We have to move on
Yeah.
to the next speaker. So thank you so much. Thank you for your
Thank
answer.
you.
I think that we are all in not an optimal situation, so I can imagine how children experience that, and especially in Palestine under the the conditions they live in. So I do thank you for bringing that issue to light for us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Khitam, please unmute yourself. Question for you is regarding playback theater. I was exposed to this method of maybe even healing through your research and what you have done. I noticed that in your work, in your study, you had boys who were part of the group, and I understand why you had only boys. But if you had a group of girls who were part of that group, would you think that you will find different results in terms of the ability? And I'm not biased to girls here, I'm asking as a scientific question, would you find it different in terms of their abilities to express themselves? Maybe your method helped boys more than girls. Any thoughts on gender differences regarding playback theater?
I tell you what I think. I can't be 100% sure till I do the same or something similar with girls. In general, girls express themselves a bit more than boys. They don't need that long process to be open and to open up. With the boys, we did succeed, but it took some time and we needed a longer process and we needed more break ice activities and warm up activities. But in the end, they did express and they brought stories and they managed to do playback theater, which is a bit hard method to do. They finally managed to improvise stories on stage in front of their mothers, which was not that easy to do, but they did succeed. I do believe that with girls, we would somehow get to these results. Maybe the process would be a bit different. Maybe the stories that they bring would be different. But since if I applied this research at the same place in Colombia refugee camp, I would hear similar stories about clashes, about death, about occupation, about confrontations, about checkpoint, surrounding wall, the separation wall. So they would bring these issues in addition, probably to their personal, maybe more personal stories or more sensitive issues that usually the boys feel shy to talk about or to bring up. So now you are encouraging me somehow to do playback theater with girls, which I hope to do in the future. Yeah, because I also would like to examine this kind of method with girls, and it is the first time we do such research in Palestine. We do playback theater in Palestine at the Freedom Theater Engineer Refugee Camp, but to do it as a research and see results and to do some intensive workshop, intensive sessions, I don't believe we have done that before. So it was a unique, and I do believe that if we do this with girls, we'll find some unique results as well.
We sure do look forward to that and hearing more about your research. Thank you so much, Dr. Edelbey.
You're welcome.
My last question and about the Mu'akha program. I personally, and I'm asking this question maybe on behalf of everyone, but I personally did not clearly, Ahmed, get the idea of Mu'akha versus mentoring or peer-to-peer or what we call here in the US context. So how was your program different in terms of the adaptation to the Algerian culture and the communities in Algeria? For example, if I'm thinking about my context as a Palestinian, Mu'akha would be very similar to myself mentoring my cousin, mentoring people who have never been to a university, using the extended family as a network for that mu'akha or mentoring. Did you notice any differences in terms of the way you address it in Algeria versus here in the US? And sorry, I want to remind people, please don't leave without taking the evaluation form.
Thank you so much, Professor Ilham. I may like to say some words, or Steve, do you want to explain that, or?
Why don't you go first and talk about Algeria? Okay.
Yeah. So just I want to note that the mu'akhat was like one of the outcomes of a long partnership between me and Steve, University of Virginia, and École Normale Supérieure, and it is like an attempt to establish this transnational dialogue and exchange of skills and the word, and through the discussions, we found out that the mu'akhat, as it was enacted by the Prophet, was really an embodiment of peer mentoring in a modern sense of the word. So in the United States, in every department, in every school, you have like many forms of advisement, mentoring in at all levels. And in Algeria, we don't have any kind of support for students entering university. And this is like one of the things that led us to think why in our history and in our culture and religion we have the practice of mu'akhat, and we don't have systems of support for students, and university atmosphere and the skills and knowledge that is required for students is totally different from those at lower levels, at higher school or middle school, and we don't provide that. So we took that name that is, we take like ownership of the idea because it is ours, it is from our culture, and we try to professionalize the practice and try to benefit from those like professional and advanced practices in US universities. And we from then we thought of mu'akhat as a mentoring. I hope it's clear. Steve, do you want to add anything?
Well, I would just add that if you think about mentoring within US universities, typically they're trying to get students to sort of fit into a particular identity, the successful university student, which is somewhat individualistic. It's also somewhat exclusionary, because if you have a campus where you're saying you support diversity, and you force every student to fit into a particular version of the successful student, which is what mentoring can do, you eliminate heritages of students, identities of students, and in places like UVA, I think you reinforce a certain Islamophobia, where students who fail to fit into what is mentored as they did as a successful student become sort of biased against in classrooms. So in a way, although I wouldn't claim the concept because I'm not Islamic, I think this notion of shifting the balance of power in terms of creating communities of students who can articulate the value of their heritage in an academic setting is a way to create support networks so they do not feel biased or discriminated against, is implicit in what we're talking about. So it shouldn't be seen as we're saying the US mentoring program should be sent overseas, which I know is a real impulse of the US culture. We're saying that mentoring in the US needs to humble itself to understand the knowledges of its students. And within the context of Algeria, providing more support to non-traditional students might do some of the same work.
Very, very interesting. I think I have tons of questions for each one of you, and apologies that we really don't have time to even talk more about these very timely topics and important issues. My daughter went to UVA, and I know what Islamophobia looked like at UVA. So I think there's a lot we can talk about. But I want to thank you all for being with us. I want to thank all our presenters for being very patient with us, preparing the presentation, pre-recording, and being here with us live. I know there's time difference, and it's already evening or night in some places. I want to thank our audience, everyone who participated, who attended, and please don't forget to take the survey. And please, I know tomorrow is Friday, but hopefully you can join us again, 12 noon Eastern time till 1:30 tomorrow. Thank you so much, and see you tomorrow, inshallah. Bye, everyone. Bye.